First, I think you need to know that I'm not a pacifist, and neither am I an isolationist. But I believe this Syrian war is none of our business, and I think we're making a grave error getting involved. And make no mistake about it, we are already involved. Our CIA has been training for months, training Syrian rebels in Turkey to overthrow the Syrian government. We're giving these rebels millions of dollars, we're giving them arms, and we're giving them ammunition, and we're giving them political support. I think that's a grave error. We're hoping that this rally will kind of draw a line in the sand and at least tell the national leaders, whom seem to be very mute on this subject, by the way. We want them to know here in the heartland, in Oklahoma City, that we're opposed to getting our government even more involved. And believe me, that's very likely to happen when you have powerful senators encouraging the president to establish a no-fly zone. And the next thing down the road will be even larger arms shipments. And so we've been down this road before, and we think it's ill-advised. And we're hoping that our rally will spark a movement in the United States. We hope that it gets a lot of exposure on the Facebook and YouTube and other outlets. The second reason why I'm opposed to this involvement is the makeup of the Syrian rebels. There are a coalition of over 6 groups that are involved in trying to overthrow the Assad government. At least 2 of these groups we know to be known terrorist organizations that have attacked us in the past. One is a front for al-Qaeda. They are part of the Syrian rebels. And the other one is the Muslim Brotherhood. And matter of fact, the Muslim Brotherhood is probably the strongest force in trying to topple the Syrian government. So let's just hypothetically say that the Syrian rebels succeed. Well, what kind of government is going to arise there? Do you think that government's going to be a government that's going to be friendly to the United States? I don't think so. And the current government isn't friendly to us. And both sides have been and are committing atrocities, including from the Syrian rebels killing Coptic Christians.
The United States has gotten into 3 major conflicts that have escalated to become costly and regrettable. Regardless of the intentions going in, they all exhausted our military and drained our treasury. How many today could say about those wars they were well worth the price? Now the U.S. is arming some of the rebels in the Syrian civil war, just putting our toe in the water, you might say. Our position is that the U.S. must not become militarily involved in Syria, period. And the speakers at our rally this Friday evening, from the right and from the left, will echo that sentiment. War is an abomination that should be avoided at all costs unless absolutely necessary for our survival. The U.S. should pursue diplomacy and negotiations in Syria, but not military action. We invite everyone to the South Plaza of the state capitol this Friday at 7. There will be action sheets and materials to pick up and petitions to sign.
I think that when we look at where we're coming from with regard to intervention in Syria, we're looking at an array of options where there are no good options. You know, Syria presents one of the worst humanitarian crises that we've seen in this century. Over 90,000 killed in the civil war, many more refugees, and many more that remain in Syria caught in the conflict, and their lives in jeopardy on a daily basis. There is no evidence and no indication that giving the various rebel groups and then trying to distinguish between the various rebel groups as they're splintered among themselves, that giving them small arms will in any way mitigate the humanitarian crisis that's unfolding before our eyes. In fact, in the short term, it's very likely that arming the rebels will only exacerbate the humanitarian crisis. And further, by intervening with military aid to Syria, to the Syrian rebels, we are then making ourselves, or putting ourselves in a position where we're going to be faced with other questions of more consequential magnitude down the road. What happens when the arming of Syrian rebels works or doesn't work? What happens when the other military and political powers that are at play in Syria respond to our arming of the rebels? And then ultimately, if the Bashar al-Assad regime is toppled, which is something that I hope to see, but that when it is toppled, what kind of a role do we have in rebuilding the political institutions and the democratic institutions of Syria? I think that if we intervene militarily in this conflict now, which is a civil war, if we become part of this civil war, it will undermine our position later on as the United States tries to take a leadership role in not directing, but in assisting the Syrian people in building democratic institutions that we enjoy here in the United States.